My name's Eric McCoy, and this is the show of controversy. It's debates, right? Looking to walk a mile in the shoes of those with the wrong size sometimes. And I'm here with my good friend, Lona Curie.
That's right. I'm Lona Curry. I'm the transgender mentor, and I'm again honored to be here with Eric McCoy on this awesome, walk a mile in my shoes episode. We're going to go from one extreme to the other. But first, I got to say, man, I'm loving your fashion statement. I'm loving this new merchandise you got going.
This is, again, high as fuck. Right, doing it clean. But we kept it kind of clean, on here. Didn't do the as fuck,
It's rated PG-13, so you
correct, absolutely.
I'm loving that merchandise, man, and I know we got a lot of cross watchers here too, so better make sure we all know how to get us one of those dang
absolutely shirts. Yeah, you can always go to my website. We'll point that out at the end.
Good deal.
Okay, so with so many topics that are difficult to walk in, I decided I wanted to look into a debate that falls within, actually, ironically enough, last week's episode, as we talked about abortion. Yep. Not the topic, but instead many that oppose abortion, right, as we talked about, support this topic.
Absolutely.
And the term pro-life has, according to this, limited meaning, and probably really is the wrong identification when you compare it with the topic of today.
Yeah.
What is pro-life? Just as we said last week, it means for life, before birth. But we don't care much about after you're born, I think. Right. I mean,
that's right.
So when it's abortion, they support life, but in other cases, they support death.
Turn them and burn them, baby.
Yes, we are speaking about the death penalty, which is going to be the topic of the day. Now, I want to do something, and I think this is very funny. I want to begin with something. I want to show you a quick video of a guy. His name's Professor Robert Blecker, who supports the death penalty. He's going to discuss the reasons why and a brief argument he has for those that oppose the death penalty in possibly executing someone that is innocent. Take a look at this.
That some people simply deserve to die, and we have an obligation to execute them. So in a word, why do I support the death penalty? In a word, justice. In 3 words, they deserve it. Executing the innocent. We do not know for a fact that we have executed even one innocent person. We suspect we have. We probably have. Many fewer than the abolitionists claim, but we probably have. I don't know who it is, but it's horrifying that we have, if we have, and we probably have.
If we have, we probably have. Maybe we have. We could have.
Could have. But we did. But maybe we didn't. But if possibly. We did, they deserved it.
Right.
Who's on first?
But maybe.
No, what's on second? No, who's on third?
That guy was awesome, wasn't he? Freaking awesome. I love that. So.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so pro-life and pro-death seem to contradict, I think, within the wording itself. But the death penalty, just like abortion, is political.
Very much so.
And obviously within the realms of religion. And on the political side, I know everybody always throws this out as, probably slamming Republicans. I'm going to slam a Democrat here. And actually our president, currently Joe Biden, and as a result of his 1994 crime bill. Now, of course, he's also switched arguments, just like most politicians do.
Right.
But I want to show this to you real quick. And to me, this bothers me a little bit. So take a look at this.
The president's death penalty proposals, and I might add, Biden crime bill is before us, calls for the death penalty for 51 offenses. A wag in the newspaper recently wrote that something to the effect that Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking. The president's bill calls for the death penalty on 46 offenses. The difference is negligible. Yet let's put it in, I am a supporter of the death penalty. I am a supporter of the death penalty without the racial justice provision in it. I think it's better with it, but I'm supporter without it in it as well.
So he is a huge, he was
Yeah.
a huge supporter of the death penalty. Now, of course, as he became president and the Democratic side, he's got to change his tune.
Compromise. Yep. Got to compromise.
Yeah, I found that really interesting, though, that he didn't even really dispute the argument that they put that he wants the death penalty for everything except jaywalking.
Right. It almost seemed like he wore it as, you know, as a cloak of pride almost, you know, as if that was.
That's weird. I mean,
It is.
Now, again, there's so many politicians do support it, you know, and it is, you know, obviously, you know, the 1994 crime law had provisions with the federal death penalty act. And this actually expanded federal law to make 60 crimes, including drug crimes that do not involve homicide, eligible for the death penalty. You know, crimes could fall. Typically, they fell under three broad categories, right? Homicide offenses, espionage and treason, and non-homicidal narcotics offenses.
How do you justify that, though?
I don't know. I mean, you know, the argument has always been that, you know, if you're, you know, selling drugs, you potentially could be killing people. Possibly. I mean, I was a drug dealer, you know, back in the day. And, you know, I did the drugs, of course, that I was selling. So I knew exactly what I was giving people.
Right.
I wasn't, you know, the guy that's going to high schools and freaking recruiting people to, I mean, everybody that, and typically everybody I know that, you know, you're selling to people that are already doing it.
Correct.
And you're doing it to make money to support your habit.
So, to support your habit. Well, my argument with that, with the first part though, is we don't hold, say, pharmacists or doctors to the same level because they could potentially be selling people, you know, drugs that obviously addict them and obviously could harm them. I mean, people die from pharmaceutical drugs every single day.
Well, there is some changes within that. There actually was a doctor out in Los Angeles who had an impact. Jody Barber, a good friend of mine, she did a couple documentaries. Her son died at 19 on their couch at home. Wow. She did a documentary called Overtaken and Overtaken 2, Where Are They Now? And the doctor was not somebody directly that her son was seeing, but friends of hers was seeing this doctor, and they were getting Opana, which is one of the most powerful opiates. And so her son, though, was seeing another doctor who I had actually done an investigation on myself. And so he was on like Seroquel. I think he was getting an opiate from him. He was on a whole cocktail of medications. And then he got Opana from his friend, apparently. This doctor in Los Angeles ended up getting charges and actually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. So,
well, I mean, the reason that I say, and maybe we should do a show about this, but the reason that I say good in that situation is that people go to school to become doctors, and we go in as people without that education and
asking for help.
Yeah. Now, you know, I'm a person, I love when people, they do give the argument, and I get it. Well, you all choose to do that. And there's truth to that. There is truth to that. But the point is I didn't get addicted to opiates because I began using heroin. I became addicted to opiates unknowingly for myself. I had no idea that these were addictive, had no idea what was fixing to happen to my life once I stopped taking them. I trusted the doctor.
Absolutely.
And then the next thing I know, I'm sick. And at the point that I'm sick, I still don't even know what I'm going in and asking him for. And then he obviously knows something I don't know, and he yanks them. So for that, that's the reason that I would say good, because that's different than Joe Blow drug dealer on the street,
Absolutely.
you know?
Well, because it's not somebody that's taking money to support a habit. I mean, unless they're
Absolutely.
taking it too. I don't, but they
Absolutely.
typically make enough money to where they don't need to do something
Sure.
like that. And
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it's strictly for money, for those
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
The other part, the big part, and I want to talk about this briefly, and then we'll kind of come back to this at the end, but I wanted to mention something. So 2 verses in the Bible, right? And this is, again, when we look at it from the biblical standpoint, are most often used by the Christians, again, who support the death penalty.
Right.
Which of course, as always, is within the Old Testament, right? The first is Exodus 21:24, which basically lays out the Old Testament rules that govern personal behavior. And we didn't discuss this with abortion, but it's used in that argument also, right? If people are fighting, they hit a pregnant woman, she gives birth prematurely, but there's no serious injury, they must be fined, right? Whatever the woman's husband demands, and then the court allows. But if there's serious injury, you are to take life for life. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise, right?
Yeah.
And so, pro-choice and pro-life both use this argument, though, right? Referring to serious injury. Is it, this is the argument, is it the baby or is it the mother?
Correct. Yeah.
Because the pro-choice people can use that argument by saying that if that the baby is a possession basically of the mother. And typically in the Bible, if you lose a possession, you're fined and you have to give something. And then if there's serious injury and portraying to the mother, then it's eye for eye, kind of thing. Now, people that are pro-life say that, no, it's the miscarriage, but the baby lived. The serious injury could be related to the baby, and then it's to, eye for eye, blah, blah, blah. So,
do you see how complicated this is now? And yet they use it so flippantly. And I bet they haven't sat down and even had a conversation like this one that even hashes this thing out.
Yeah. Now, the second argument for death penalty support is, of course, Leviticus, right?
Yes.
We love Leviticus. We've talked about this one many times. 24:19 through 21 says again, and if a man causes a blemish in his neighbor, as he had done, so shall it be done to him, breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again. He that killeth a beast, he shall restore it. And he that killeth a man, he shall be put to death. Now, the question that I throw out is, how far does the eye for an eye go? And what specifically is this referring to?
Valid question.
Absolutely. And so I want to bring Donald Trump into this for a second. And I have an audio. This is not actually a video, but I have an audio of Donald Trump explaining how far this can go.
Is there a favorite Bible verse or Bible story that has informed your thinking or your character through life, sir?
Well, I think many. I mean, when we get into the Bible, I think many, so many. And tell people talk an eye for an eye. You can almost say that. That's not a particularly nice thing. But, if you look at what's happening to our country, I mean, when you see what's going on with our country, how people are taking advantage of us and how they scoff at us and laugh at us and they laugh at our face and they're taking our jobs, they're taking our money, they're taking they're taking the health of our country. And we have to be very firm and we have to be very strong. And we can learn a lot from the Bible, that I can tell you.
So if somebody laughs in your face, you laugh in their face. Which
he gave a good example of.
Yeah. And so in his argument, he's kind of just going everywhere with it.
Everywhere. Because he never says anything specific.
No.
There's never, look what's happening to our country. Okay.
Right.
Tell me, what is it?
Yeah,
a lot of this stuff we've given away.
Yes.
It's not being taken, we've given it away.
Absolutely. So how far does the eye for an eye go, right? Now, biblical scholars generally interpret eye for an eye, which is derived from, it's actually derived from the ancient Babylonian code of Hammurabi as a restriction on retaliation for personal injuries. So in other words, only an eye for an eye. So my question, according to Old Testament rule, who would be the person offering the eye to an eye?
Right.
Would it be an officer in the prison, right, serving that sentence who has no connection with the person?
Yeah.
I want to show you. Here's a man who hit the button for execution in a state more times than any other person.
Given 17 years as Virginia's executioner, began October 12, 1984, with the electrocution of Linwood Briley, one of 3 brothers who were part of a gang that killed at least 11 people.
He told Reverend Brown he wanted to be baptized, and we took him upstairs and we had prayer, and the guys sung a little song or something, you know, and they baptized him.
You sat there and prayed with him,
Yeah.
knowing you were about to kill him.
Yeah, but, you know, well, not just me, the state of Virginia was going to kill him.
Understood, but you're the
Yeah.
man who had to press the button.
Yes, right.
Was that hard the first time?
In a sense it was, you know, and if I would sit here and tell you it wasn't hard, I'd be lying to you, and I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it was hard. I mean, this man haven't done anything to me, you know. It's not that I'm getting revenge on him, you know. I'm just doing what the state of Virginia wanted to do, carry out this execution.
Then the question goes, right, and this is something I was thinking about. So what if the individual was actually innocent? Right. Then would he have committed murder with his eye for an eye, meaning that he or she, whoever, would have been put to death, right?
Absolutely.
Very interesting thing to think about.
It's very interesting. If we're all responsible for our own sin.
Absolutely. And that man we saw is currently a critic of the death penalty. But I want to show you another video real quick. Same guy.
Given switch from executioner to death penalty critic springs in part from the case of Earl Washington, who was sentenced to death in 1984, but eventually pardoned based on DNA evidence.
I would have executed him.
It would have been you.
Yeah. If that killer was still out there and then I took an innocent life, I'm in the same boat as predicament this guy's in. He took an innocent life. I just took an innocent life.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make me any greater.
You didn't want to press the button for the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Very valid. Very valid.
And that's basically just what I had said.
Yeah. Completely valid.
Would he have to hit the electric chair?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and how many times of it as we've done? I mean, barring the Who's On First video we started with, that guy, we do know that we have, well, yeah.
We could have.
Not as many as the abolitionists say, but I'm going to lean over to the abolitionist side to be in agreement that we have had a lot of innocent human beings on death row, and many of them that were exonerated after, we're talking about 20, 25, and 30 plus years. But how many of those people died before they ever got the chance?
Absolutely.
All because of the times that we live in, where race is always, we always come back to the same things, Eric. It's always religion, politics, and race. Those are the 3 dividers in our humanity.
Absolutely. And this is a big topic too, because when you look at, again, 13% of the population is Black people. That's a pretty low percentage, but it makes up like almost 50% of people that are on death row.
Absolutely.
Now, we're going to discuss biblical a little bit later, okay? But before, I want to look at the argument for death penalty by politicians, right? And again, as we've discussed again, the Constitution, right? And the idea of theocracy. And I want to mention something really quick, okay? So according to, and there's a place called the Pew Research Center, right? Which, for those that don't know, it's a partisan organization that basically informs the public about the issues, the attitudes, and the trends that sort of shape this world.
Yeah.
And they conduct public opinion polling, demographic research, content analysis, and other data-driven social science research, but they're not designed to take positions. And so according to polling, they've stated that more Americans favor than oppose the death penalty. About 60% of adults, US adults, favor the death penalty for people convicted of murder, including there's about 27% who strongly favor it. Right? Now, there's about 4 in 10, which is about 39%, that oppose the death penalty, with, again, approximately 15% that strongly oppose it. So based on public opinion, and we could say that within the constitutional guidelines, that our citizens support this decision more than not. And it should be imposed, right, by popular opinion, right? Vote.
All right.
Should be a law.
Yep.
We could actually end with this, right? We all agree?
Right. Now, everybody agrees.
Now, I want to tell you, though, for those that agree with lock stamping executions in because of public opinion, then we need to stamp abortion as legal because polls show almost the identical percentages, but instead the higher number saying abortion should be legal. According to that, and according to the same organization, right, 59% say abortion should be legal.
Divide and conquer.
All or most cases, with about 39% think abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. So I'm actually thinking our country supports putting people to death.
I am going to agree.
We're for abortion and we're for the death penalty,
That's right. That's right.
We need to kill these motherfuckers.
Yep, every one of them, regardless.
Kids and adults.
That's right. Kids and adults, and let's don't forget the homosexuals, where we let God burn them quickly.
Absolutely.
Let's not forget.
Yes.
It's like divide and conquer is working.
Yeah. The greatest issue that I have is there's no consistency.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where the problem, I think, with the death penalty lies, right? You've got the people that have a lot of money that can hire great attorneys that will not get the death penalty.
Right.
You're going to have the poor people, public defenders.
Yep.
Some of the public defenders are racist.
Yep.
Love to support putting them to death, which we have seen many times. And racism, again, is evident within certain places. I found a story real quick. I want to show you an image. Okay, this is really interesting. It's not a video, but it's an image of a case that is now being looked at to be with the death penalty being overturned because of him being Jewish and the judge not liking Jews. So as you can see, this is actually a guy by the name of Randy Halpern, who is Jewish. Now, he was sentenced to death, and if you look at the areas that I sort of highlighted, he was sentenced to death for the murder of a police officer. And he was not actually one who was involved in the shooting itself, but he was convicted under the way the Texas law of parties, quote unquote, law of parties, which makes accomplices equally liable for the acts of everyone involved in the felony that's actually committed. Now, the trial was presided over by Dallas County Judge Vickers Cunningham, who referred to Halpern as a fucking Jew and a goddamn kike and called Halpern's Latino co-defendant wetbacks.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
It said that the former judge, and it even gets more interesting, had made racist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic remarks and had even set up a trust for his children, provided they married a white Christian of the opposite sex. This was a trust for them. Now, according to the court documents, his lawyers spoke with an acquaintance of Cunningham who said Cunningham took special pride in the death sentence because they included Latinos and a Jew. And he referred to his brother, who was gay, and whose partner was a black as nigger Bill.
Wow.
He later launched a campaign for Dallas district attorney so that he could save Dallas from niggers, wetbacks, Jews, and dirty Catholics.
Wow. The hate that lives in one man's soul, man. The hate over what?
Crazy.
Ridiculous.
But that is stuff that goes on. Now, again,
Every
that's actually
day.
a white person. Obviously, there was
Every
a
day.
co-defendant that was a black person, and he also had a Mexican that were probably all sentenced to death.
Absolutely, because a lot of times, like as we've talked before, in maybe when we did the KKK show, is a lot of times that if you are a white person who's now involved in the civil rights movement, or you're involved in a case like that with blacks and Latinos, you're going to get even extra harsher punishment as well, because they look at you as a sellout of your race. I mean, we've seen this happen before too. I mean, where the fuck does this come from, man? Like,
and if you looked at the date, it's very recent.
Yes, it's not even that old.
It's
You know what I'm
2021.
saying? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but it's real that we still live here, man. That we still live here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's baffling.
It is. It is. It is.
So, if we look at the support side of the death penalty, right? They argue, number one, that it is a deterrent. Here's that argument.
Having a death penalty deters people from committing crimes.
I don't know that any regular human, the average human, which is who we're speaking about, would risk their life when that survival instinct is so incredibly ingrained and so strong.
That's the foundation of my entire argument, the reason why I stay on the left-hand side. Not because I feel that capital punishment should be handed out, dished out to everyone that commits a crime. No, I'm talking about the idea that, in my opinion, capital punishment is a deterrent. It influences the way people behave. Look at Michigan. Michigan abolished capital punishment in 1858.
Exactly.
Look at the crime rate in Michigan right now.
Ridiculous.
Now, they mentioned a couple of things, right? And one was Michigan. And Detroit actually has the second highest violent crime rate in the nation.
Yeah.
I saw numbers on like 2015 among cities with a population greater than 50,000.
Right.
So, and in 2013, with only 7% of the state population, the city of Detroit had 50% of all murders recorded in Michigan. That's a big number.
Yeah, it's
right?
a huge number.
But I am going to throw an argument in here. The death penalty is not lowering the homicide rate. Think about it. I mean, how many people are like, oh, you know what? I really want to kill that person, but you know what? I'm not going to because of the death penalty.
Of course, when we look at a city like Detroit, who's been steeped in deep survival poverty, I think that we're looking at deeper issues.
I don't know if that has anything to do with them not having the death penalty.
Right.
And I want to show you a graph real quick showing the differences between the states that have the death penalty versus the ones that do not.
Right.
It sort of argues against what this guy is actually saying. So here is a graph, murder rates in death penalty and non-death penalty states. Now, the darker colors are actually the non-death penalty states.
So the blue is the non-death penalty, and the red is
the red is the one. And if you look at it across the board, it's actually higher.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That actually have the death penalty.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know the answer to the reason why, but these are statistical numbers.
Yeah.
That really kind of show and dispute that argument. Because again, like I said, I mean, people don't think that way. It's not like I'm not going to do drugs because it's illegal.
Right. Well, it's the same thing. I'm not going to do heroin because I could overdose.
Absolutely.
If that worked, we would be working that, man.
Yes.
I mean, we would be working that to save lives.
Yes.
Don't do that. You might die.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that argument, the death penalty does not necessarily increase public safety. I mean, how really would it if the homicide rates are higher than non-death penalty states?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the other arguments that people make is, cost, right? And the expense of the death penalty is very high, and those again that support the death penalty basically say it's high because we keep them alive for too long for their years of appeals, which they do. I mean, if you look at a lot of the people within the states, a lot of them are in for like 20 years, 25 years, even 30 years in some cases. California, again, put a halt on death penalties. And, so we have, big numbers, people that are sitting there. And the fact is that if you do get sentenced to death, you do get more appeals because again, and I almost want to say I agree with it to a certain extent. I don't know if it's to get as many as they get, but we want to make sure they're guilty.
Yeah. There's some free men that are grateful that, they had sat there for 20, 25 years, because in that time, look what happened. They became exonerated without a shadow of a doubt. It takes, and when they were convicted, let's say it took 3 months for a trial, and that trial and the witnesses and all that can be overturned just like that when we look into DNA.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it's, just like that guy said, how horrible would it be to be the guy that's hitting the button? It's not the judge. It's not the freaking governor that could, halt the execution.
Yeah.
It's the guy there. And how shitty would that be for later you to find out that, oh my God, that guy was innocent. I killed an innocent person.
Yeah, that's a regular hourly employee, man. Yeah. That's an hourly employee.
And now that guy needs to be put to death because he killed an innocent person.
Why is it always?
although it would just take, it was just in the name of his job because, and people would just go, oops.
Oops, exactly.
Damn it.
Oops, we did it. Oh man, shoot. Just like your cop said on that day, it happens. Oops.
So I want to propose a few questions here from a video. And as we've discussed before, the greatest way to solve issues or to deal with issues is to sit and discuss, as these people do. Again, screaming and protesting, doesn't really do much because all you're screaming and protesting to is the honking of the horns for the people that support you. You're not changing any opinions. No. It's not going to change anybody's mind. Yeah. And even sitting down and discussing doesn't necessarily do that either, but it's going to have a better possibility.
People are listening in this point. When the yelling and all that happens, we all know that basic communication, that shuts down. Your logical mind shuts down. You go in defensive mode. Not hearing nothing, man.
Absolutely.
It's an argument.
So take a look at this video.
Anyone can be rehabilitated back into society.
Absolutely. Absolutely, y'all. Here's the thing. I think this is probably the most hippie part about my whole thinking is that unending optimism for people, that I know better than to give up on someone.
I agreed with the first half of the sentence, but not the second. In that I think anybody can be rehabilitated. That doesn't mean that they're going back into society. There are options for somebody to live a full, complete life and not be a danger to society.
You also have to look at it with child molestation cases. I mean, how are you going to send someone that did a crime like that that's so heinous? And it's happened many times where they release these people constantly and they're still doing the same thing.
No matter how much you try to rehabilitate someone, they also have to want to be rehabilitated in order for that to work at all.
Accept help and want to get over it. That's the thing. We're assuming people don't want to be rehabilitated. That's my whole point, is that if you can believe that people don't want to be rehabilitated, though, then you have to also believe the possibility that they could redeem themselves and do something amazing after that rehabilitation happens.
So I like that video. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's great. These were just people
Yeah.
down having a conversation. They're not screaming and
Absolutely.
yelling and cussing at
Right.
each other.
Right.
And I actually, the girl that
Mhm.
said agreed with the first statement, but not the second, the first part, but not the second half.
Yeah.
I don't believe all people will be rehabilitated because
No.
again, they all actually had good arguments. You got a number
Sure. Yeah.
person has to want to.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, studies have also shown, the guy brought up, rape, sexual offenses. And there's a lot of psychologists that, depending on the severity of it, don't believe that those people can.
Well, my issue is too, how many of those are actually experiencing execution?
They're not.
They're not.
But that wasn't the question.
Sure.
The question in this was just rehabilitation. But and the fact being is true, that even if people are rehabilitated to a certain extent, people that killed a bunch of people, I don't know if they should ever be free out on the streets,
No.
because the argument for some is that, the death penalty, if you have somebody locked up and they're no longer a danger to society, why do we have to kill them? Why is it our job to execute these people?
Like we said in the beginning, before we even started taping, I'm down the middle with this issue, in the fact that, I'm scarred by the amount of racism that is involved in these cases, in the justice system, and not even just about race. I have to go back to classism. It comes down to your race, your identity, and your class, as far as, poverty and wealth goes. And I think that if we took out those things and we did what we really said we were going to do, what we set out to exclaim is our country, which is, justice and equality for all. If we really lived by that, I think that it would be a more cut and dry issue. But it's another one of those issues where, how do we definitively say, I am pro death penalty, if I know that there are probably more innocent people dying in the hands of executioners than there are guilty?
Yeah. The problem, the thing in the studies that I've seen, and I was looking at, different statistical data, that, depending on the locations that we're talking about, you'll have, a Black person, for instance, that's being charged with murder. There's all white people as a jury. The prosecutors always going to want to, that's one of the greatest things they can do is, because they have the ability to throw some people out, if you can get all white people in there, it's going to help the prosecution, right?
Of course.
And then, of course, your defense attorney, depending on locations where you live, they could be racist as hell too. There are definitely a lot of places in the South that
you better believe
highly dislike Black people, and will easily, and then you go to the coercion factor. The police use tactics to get people to admit to things that they didn't do.
Yes.
We see story after story on this, and later it actually comes out as, yes, this did happen. The story of the Memphis 3.
Yes.
That story of the Memphis 3 was a great example. That I don't know if you ever saw the documentary on that.
Absolutely.
But, because the guy had long hair, wore Metallica shirts. It was, it was a satanic
rumored
ritual.
To be satanic. Yeah.
They had zero proof. It was all circumstantial.
Yep.
How do you convict somebody and sentence them to death on circumstantial evidence? That should not even be a thing.
Nope. And that's the power of fear. And that's the power of who's holding the cards, who's putting the story out. I remember that case. I'm sitting here without, a good friend, a man I consider my little brother right now for the next 7 years over this same exact situation. You don't have enough money to buy the attorney that will find the holes in the story. Now you've got a coerced confession, we call it. And when we send it to the judge to have it, thrown out, the judge says no.
Yep.
You got a family name. I know your family. I'm going to assume that you're guilty because all the rest of your family are fuck ups. That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
So how can knowing that, how can I just definitively say I am for the death penalty? Now, there are some things, man, that, and I can't even say, I really can't even say, but I think that you're so right. Number one, nobody should be sitting on death row on circumstantial evidence.
No.
It's not enough. It's just not enough.
And we are actually going to talk about this briefly on a biblical side too. And this is interesting when we get to that. Let me show you the next debate here of questions that they put out in this. I love this video. I mean, it's so cool in how this is done. So take a look at this.
Everyone deserves a second chance.
Personally, I don't think everybody deserves a second chance, but I do believe that there are people who do deserve it. So it just depends, again, like I was mentioning earlier, it depends on what kind of crime they're committing. If they killed somebody, I don't believe that they deserve a second chance. But if they did like a lesser crime, like they're stealing something from a store, like candy or something like that, or a TV or a bike, I do believe that they deserve a second chance.
Here's the thing for me. This is why it gets hypocritical to me in this kind of discussion, where we all think about the other person of the victim or something like that in terms of second chances. But the whole biggest idea, we really confront this idea, is if it was us. Would I want a second chance if I knew I messed up on something, however heinous or big it was, or however small it was? I want that second chance for me.
It's an interesting argument.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I think about this, and again, that argument was not specific to the death penalty.
True.
But it could be, with certain aspects. But, I think about this with me, for instance. I'm a 6-time convicted felon, but look at all of the good that I've done. Look at everything that I'm working on. Do I deserve a second chance? And again, there's going to be people that say no, Is there a way for me to get my record cleaned? Which there actually is. I haven't really done anything for it, but it reminds me of that argument of our Texas guy, Ted Cruz. He had made that comment that related to getting a driver's license after having a drug conviction.
Right.
I don't even understand that.
No.
I mean, this. The way some of the states are too is like, you can't even vote if you're a convicted felon.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My state's that way. And it's always easy to have a belief system about something when you're standing on the outside of it. I appreciate that young man's issue. I mean, his response in that, bring it back home, and you and I can understand this very well because we have made some decisions within some times where our minds were not clearly working correctly, and we were making decisions from a survival mentality, from a place of pure survival. In that moment, when we have to look at human behavior, we look at the way the brain works, the entire nervous system. There are certain organs in the body that are being cut off from oxygen and blood flow because now we're in survival mode. We make fucked up decisions all the time. And I'm not excusing people that make, but we have to take it apart though. When we take apart child molestation, that's not a survival issue. That's not a survival issue. You're not in a moment, but we can look at some fights that have gone too far and someone dies. Yep. We look at robberies where fear is involved and one small thing happens, somebody dies. I think that it would be a completely different conversation if everybody took the stance of what if it was me. And maybe you and I have that stance because we've been in this situation where we've taken advantage of that second chance.
Well, what's funny to me and I know for years people used to talk about this, and there are definitely cases, but people like congressmen, senators, that have had DUIs themselves. You think about a DUI. I mean, DUI to me is more dangerous than somebody sitting home doing drugs.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And a DUI is a misdemeanor. Sitting home doing drugs used to be a felony. It's now, they changed the law, but so part of my felonies is just possession of, now I had things beyond that with possession for sales because I had a lot of it, in other offenses, but just the fact of me doing drugs is less dangerous to the public than somebody driving, a drunk
weapon. Yeah. A 2-ton weapon.
Absolutely. And so, to me, that's just, and again, it just kind of goes back to something we see a lot. We had Tony Rakakis in Orange County, used to be the Orange County District Attorney. And he was the guy that was like, drug offenders, throw them in prison, lock them up, throw away the key. I mean, that was the way he was until his son started getting arrested and his son went to prison. And then all of a sudden, he started doing things a little differently. He even came and he spoke at a H&I convention.
Wow.
H&I being groups that go into places where people can't get out to go to meetings. And I actually spoke at the same meeting with him, which was a whole thing set up to where I actually went to lunch with him. We talked, I told him my story. And he talked a little bit about my story. He was up there, and then I kind of went up after him. But I'll tell you, it was really funny too, because it's one thing about, again, telling a sponsor your life story. You try telling the freaking Orange County District Attorney, hey, your freaking life story, right?
Yeah.
You walk away from that and you're like, damn, you know what? I got nothing to worry about now. I mean, it's fucking out there.
Yeah. I felt that way talking to our Attorney General. It's just like, well, see what happens here. It's all out there now.
Get the story out there. But yeah, I mean, I believe in the second chance. I mean,
yeah, man.
Again, now I don't necessarily believe it, if you're looking at it from people that commit murder, things that are of those types of offenses that are heinous in terms of the second chance per se of, okay, we're going to let you free.
Right.
You may be a danger to society,
Correct.
But
yeah.
Does it have to be the death penalty? I mean, that's
right.
Kind of the argument there.
Well, I mean, and when we talk about murders, I think we should be completely clear of it too, as in like we're talking like a serial killer. At that point, you're talking about somebody that, has a complete mental disorder at this point. Like that's not somebody who's going to have the second chance. This is definitely deeper. We're talking about pedophiles. Definitely deeper. We're talking about murders that are pre-planned, these things deeper. When you're talking about a homicide that happens in the commission of another felony, again, that do they necessarily even have to be free to get that second chance?
No, and they don't. I mean, and again, I mean, there's people that are in prison that are going to be there for life that are actually doing good things.
Absolutely.
Working on themselves. They're helping people in prison. Some are writing books. I mean, you get, all kinds of stuff that, and people, have turned their life. I had a client who years ago, and he was given a second chance per se. And this was for attempted murder. But he was in a gang, and at 17 years old, he shot a gang of their rivals, shot a guy in the head, and he survived. So it was actually, attempted murder. He was given 15 to life. He was charged as an adult because of the type of crime it was. And he was given all kinds of enhancements, gang affiliations, and things like that. And so parole had actually contacted us at a rehab I was working for. And he had been in for 17 years. They decided they were going to let him go. And he was one of the best clients I've ever freaking had. I mean, he was motivated. He was, he actually ended up going back to college. He got a degree in business, and he was doing great things, and so here's a guy that, went in as a fucked up individual, obviously, I mean, shooting somebody in the head just for being a rival
kid. Yeah. Yeah.
And but then going to prison and deciding while in there, he's like, you know what, I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
And he could have done life because he was sentenced to 15 to life. And a lot of cases, when people are sentenced to that type of offense, that length of time with life at the end of it, some of them never get out. Now I'm going to show you another video that we're going to discuss here briefly.
If someone genuinely apologizes for a crime, their punishment should be reduced.
There's no way of validating an apology. I mean, like, how do you know if they're apologizing, they're lying? That happens a lot. I mean, there are people who seem so genuine and behind their eyes, they're not,
you don't
they're
know.
not truthful.
Let's just say a gang-on-gang violence. Just say that a gang member did a hit on a house of a leading opposing gang member and their family, and just say, well, a shooting, he killed 3 people.
What do you think on that?
Well, I kind of got to agree. I mean, if you don't really know, you never really know. How do you make a decision like that?
You don't. And that's a tough one. I honestly, the way you do know is through their behaviors.
That's it. And that's it. That's really, truly it.
Yeah. So, one way that I think would be really, if anybody was interested in doing that, is that, if you convict somebody, before you sentence them, give it a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, obviously they'll be able to observe him and see how they're doing if he's in custody and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because words mean nothing. And we know this, words mean nothing. It's our actions that, show our sincerity of things.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it would take time. I mean, you're right about the couple months kind of a thing, because anybody can pull it together and be sincere for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But we're talking about when that wears off and your guard's down, what's your true intention? We go through that in the recovery, world, when we come out and scream, we're clean, we're clean, we're clean. And people don't want to hear it. You got to settle in. You got to get humble, settle in, and let your actions speak. So yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw one out there that's gonna be really interesting.
If someone were to kill your mother, would you be able to forgive that person?
No.
Eventually, it'd be hard.
The question was with time. Anyone could.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes with with time.
Unless you've really experienced something like that, you won't know yourself, really. You only know what you feel right now, but unless you were in that motion where it did happen, that mentality, you don't know.
Way to traumatize people with that question. Oh,
bro.
Okay, so if somebody killed your mother, would you be able to forgive them?
Well, had that question come to me when I assume I'm, that young kid's age, the guy in the suit who just immediately says no, I probably would have said no too then, but I would have to go along the lines with the other guy. At this point, what I understand about forgiveness and what that actually means, I'd have to say yes, I would. And I don't think that it would necessarily matter whether, I guess just knowing what I know about forgiveness and the importance of it, I don't think it would really necessarily matter if that person was killed. You know what I'm saying? Like that would not be the thing that would say, okay, well, I can forgive him now. Because he got the same thing. Sure, it would hurt. And I appreciate the young guy who says eventually, because that's a real answer. Eventually.
I think so too, and this is where I think it's going to be interesting. And I want to go into the biblical thing now. Right. And so I want to look at, first of all, pro-death penalty in the Bible. Okay. And numerous verses within this, and one being Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made man. And so therefore, since we are made of God's image, we're obligated by God to shed another man's blood for retribution, right?
That's what it says.
Now, the law, as given to Moses on Mount Sinai, ordained execution for several offenses: murder, striking or cursing a parent, kidnapping, adultery, incest, bestiality, sodomy, rape of a betrothed virgin, witchcraft, incorrigible delinquency, breaking the Sabbath, blasphemy, sacrificing to false gods, oppressing the weak, and then other various transgressions. And so if this is the case, should we be sentencing all of these crimes to the death penalty? Especially if we're going from the biblical side, right?
If we're going from the biblical side and we say oppressing the weak,
we're all dead.
We're all dead.
We should all just be executing each other, right?
Especially our politicians and, those in power oppressing the weak.
That's the most interesting one to me, oppressing the weak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. Oppressing the weak.
And then, of course, the big question, a lot of people bring this up too, is like, who determines what is the worst of the worst?
Yes. Yes.
And so Romans 13, 1-7, Paul calls his readers, right, to submit to the authority of civil government, reminding them that if you do wrong, be afraid, for he, the authority of the government, does not bear the sword for nothing, right?
Yeah.
If you kind of go back to a little bit, the government is corrupt.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And of course, have many personal agendas, right? To have them decide who is put to death and who is not put to death, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's, who determines the worst of the worst?
When they're standing as the worst of the worst.
Yep. Numbers 35:33 says, the blood of a murderer victim pollutes the land. A pollution that has to be cleansed by the death of the murderer. So if the murderer could not be found, an animal was to be sacrificed to God to purge the community of guilt. That's Deuteronomy also. Right? Now, we come to against the death penalty, which people always seem to leave out and forget.
Always.
They always seem to forget this guy called Jesus.
Always. But yet, they say you got to believe in Jesus to be saved.
But they don't know what he
after
did.
That, no.
They don't know what he
and then
said.
After that, they don't talk about him anymore.
Right. Christ's death on the cross ended the requirement for blood sacrifice, right? So the sacrifice of Jesus, the Lamb of God, replaced the sacrifice of animals. Therefore, his death made it unnecessary to execute murderers, right?
Exactly.
To maintain human dignity and value, because the crucifixion forever established the human value.
Right.
Hebrews 9:14, right? Says, how much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciousnesses from acts that lead to death, so that we can serve the living God.
But if we go by that, we cannot scare or control other human beings.
Absolutely.
If we live by that, we cannot.
Yeah, because Christ's teaching emphasizes forgiveness.
Yes.
Willingness to suffer evil rather than resist by force.
Yes.
Now, and probably, of course, the most compelling arguments against capital punishment are the examples of the criminals who were not executed, such as Cain, Moses, and David.
Yeah.
Not only did Jesus refuse to condemn the woman caught in adultery,
Mm-hmm.
but what did he suggest? That only those without sin were qualified to perform the execution. So those
That's
without
right.
sin shall cast the first stone.
Yep.
And Jewish interpretation of Old Testament law reflected a great reluctance on the death penalty. And circumstantial evidence wasn't a part of it. They actually required 2 eyewitnesses in Numbers 35, right? Had to have warned the accused that he was about to commit a capital crime.
Yes.
So if the 2 witnesses, if their testimonies differed, the accused was acquitted. Right?
Yep.
Men presumed to lack compassion could not rule on a capital case.
Mm. And that is the way it should be.
Yeah. And Romans 13, right, probably comes closest to speaking of the state's authority to execute. But specifically, and it refers to the state's authority, not their obligation
right
to execute.
Mm.
And this is consistent with the position that states are permitted, not mandated or prohibited, the use of that sanction. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So here's what's very interesting. And this was really cool because Morella actually did a lot of this information that she researched for me.
Thank her for being our new research assistant.
She's been
quite
amazing.
Qualified.
Yes. So what conditions, right, does the scripture give before the state can exercise capital punishment? And here are some of the principles that are drawn from the Mosaic laws, right, and their procedures. Okay. And the first one is proportionality, right? Exodus 21 to 23 to 25 establishes that punishment must be proportional to the offense.
Mm.
So the extreme sanction of death should be considered only in the most serious offenses. And so again, what is considered the most serious offense?
Mm-hmm.
This is very subjective.
Yep.
As I could think that rape with murder is more serious than murdering someone that was raping you.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yep.
And to me, a most serious offense are serial killers, probably because they seek out prey, they enjoy their killings, and have admitted that they would kill again. And a lot of them would just for sport.
Yep.
How many on death row have killed once?
Yeah.
How many of them are model prisoners and
that would be interesting.
And do what they can do to better themselves?
Yeah. Yeah.
So do these people deserve the death penalty? Do they deserve death if they feel remorse?
Yeah.
If they're trying to show the world that they're better than one action that they did. Yes, they can deserve life, of course, but death?
Right. Right.
The Bible also requires a certainty of guilt. So before a murderer could be executed, again, 2 witnesses had to confirm the guilt, right? Deuteronomy 17:6 and also Numbers 35:30, which was a very high standard of proof. So the Bible says nothing of circumstantial evidence. Okay.
Shouldn't be there.
So does our government ensure that there is at least 2 witnesses as part of a fair trial? 2 witnesses that saw it. I mean, literally, they can't be circumstantial. They have to actually have, if we're going biblically, right?
Yeah.
And then you have intent. So Numbers 35, 22 to 24 establishes that capital punishment could not be imposed when the offender did not act intentionally.
Yes.
So how many people are on death row that state death was accidental?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then due process, right? There's several provisions of the law that ensure that executions took place only after appropriate judicial procedures, right? Numbers 35, Deuteronomy 17. The issue was not it wasn't simply whether the accused was guilty, but whether he also had a fair chance to prove his innocence.
Right, right, right.
This is not what is done in our system, though, right?
No,
and
not at all.
actually the way, and you can kind of think of it, maybe this is actually better the way our system is to a certain extent, but it's the prosecutor's job to prove your guilt. It's not your job to prove your innocence.
Right.
And that's the way our system is, right? But within the Bible, it again, it's you should have the fair chance to prove your innocence. And then reluctance to execute. Okay, the law may sound very bloodthirsty, as it always does in the Old Testament, but it was applied with great restraint. Okay, Ezekiel 33:11, right? As sure as I live, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live.
Is that a second chance?
Possibly.
That sounds like a second chance.
The lawgiver himself, okay,
that
was
like
reluctant to impose the death penalty, preferring that the wrongdoers repent.
Yes. Yes.
Right? It implies that execution should be a last resort.
Yes.
And Ezekiel 33 basically suggests that repentance could commute the death sentence.
That's what it says, and
which in a nutshell seems like there's contradictory things within the Bible.
As always.
Now I know there's people that say there's no contradiction and they have reasons for, the way this all says, but
the majority of people that are using it to further their own agendas,
they are only using one side of this.
Absolutely.
Now, again, we could do the same thing, though, because we can basically say that, the last bit that we were talking about was against the death penalty, but there is also all of those statements that sort of encourage the death penalty.
Well, and I don't even really think so. I think the last, part that you were just explaining and talking about there is not even, let's say, pro-life and against the death penalty. It's basically almost where we stand on it, which is, is it the last resort?
Yeah.
If it's the last resort, and we know without a shadow of a doubt that all of these other things are in place, all of it's been proven, the witnesses are there, and all that's there, and it's a last resort. And this person does not want to repent, does not want the second chance, and there we are.
It even goes as far as if you're going to use the Bible as your guide, what did Jesus say? But thou shalt not kill. But if you've been in anger or hatred, then you have committed murder or you have killed.
Absolutely.
We've all killed then. If you're going to go by the biblical thing, we've all killed, and if you've been angry at your parents, you're to be put to death.
Right.
That's in the Old
We've
Testament.
all done it. We've all done it. We're all walking dead. Is who we all are.
Yeah.
We all are.
If you have oppressed the weak,
we all have, in one way or the other.
Yeah.
We all have.
It's death.
It's all death. It's all death. Walking dead. We're the walking dead.
So I've decided, right? And I believe in Jesus and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going by Jesus. I'm going with Jesus, right? I'm going to stick, and I'm kind of moved away from the Old Testament because he moved away from the Old Testament too.
Yeah.
And so all of these rules of sacrifice and killings and all this kind of stuff, I'm going to go with Jesus's principles because he's like the Son of God too. So,
I'm walking with Jesus myself.
Yeah.
I think if all that other was working, then we wouldn't even know Jesus. Would we have needed Jesus? No.
Right. Because Jesus was love. He was
absolutely.
Love.
Absolutely.
I'm with that.
I'm with that.
Yeah.
I am absolutely with that.
I love that KKK dude that's all biblical.
Yeah.
Like what the well, we're not racist, But I do want to drop a bunch of guns and alcohol in black communities so they can kill themselves.
Right.
So we don't have to do it anymore.
Right. But we never did it.
But we never
you never
lynched.
saw us do it. Yeah. You never saw us.
And
There was
we
no
did
pictures,
exactly. We didn't do it because you can't find a picture.
That's right.
Jesus. Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Lord Jesus.
poor
Lord
Jesus.
Jesus, help us.
I say this all the time. Poor Jesus. Can you imagine all the hypocrites? Jesus is like, take my name out of your mouth, would you?
Seriously.
Oh gosh, I think
Yeah.
poor Jesus. Man,
And
getting blamed for all kinds of stuff.
Jesus to me showed, in the Sermon on the Mount, and I love it because I mean he teaches in a fashion that we can't live that way. I mean, we're not going to, but again, he teaches in that fashion to basically say, you know what? You guys are all sinners. You guys are all screwed. Didn't use that word probably, but you're all screwed, but without saying obviously that he was God, but he was God in human flesh. And that's why we need him. We need him because we're never going to make it.
Right.
We're screwed. I mean, if somebody punches you on the left side, turn and let them punch you on the right side. Love your enemy. What benefit do you have of loving people that love you? Love your enemies.
Absolutely. That's the work. That's the work. Of course it's easy. Like on tonight's Transgender Mentor program, which we'll be doing here in just a little while, we're talking about cancel culture. We're talking about that same thing where we've all gotten so sensitive that we can't move outside of those that talk the same, think the same, and be the same.
Yeah.
But what is the challenge in that? There's no challenge to love people that think like you and look like you and are like you. I mean, look, if we're talking biblical and we're talking about Jesus, we got to look at the sacrifice that was made for this very purpose. And if we are not even willing, and if the Christians in the world that stand on the sides of these arguments that are so against humanity and life and love and all about judgment, if they can't understand that or see that,
they're missing
what's the argument? You're missing the entire point. The whole point.
It's for me, it's almost like don't use the Bible.
Don't.
For these arguments, because you're only taking a little piece. That's what kills me about it, and you're taking the one that was written freaking how many, thousands of years ago. I don't know, and failing to look at the newer one.
Right. And that's
the one that actually seems to be a little more important, I think.
Yeah. And if the whole point of it all is to help guide souls to God, to Christ, to believing, then how do you think being hypocritical and controlling and judgmental and shameful, how is that doing that? Because there's so many people here that walking around the earth today that are so hopeless because they have nothing to believe in. Because we have generations of human beings that have taken this beauty, this gift of this word, and used it as a weapon against people in order to shame them and judge them and outcast them. That to me, if we're going to talk about severity of sin, I'm going to have to venture on the side that that's going to be the one you're going to answer the most for. Is what did you do with it? What did you do with it? Gave you life. What did you do? What did you do? So
I just keep thinking like when these KKK guys hit heaven, be wearing their hoods,
right? We thought,
so what did
wait
you
a
do?
minute.
I don't know. We hung black people.
Yeah. We thought you said to do that. Somebody told us you said so.
Yeah. And he said somewhere in there you were white. What the?
Yeah, exactly. The blue eyes. What's happening here?
Blonde hair.
Where are you?
They're gonna be like, I think I'm in the wrong place. Yeah,
I
you
gotta
are.
be in the wrong
You
place.
are. You're supposed to be down. All right, I'm going to show you one more video real quick, and we're going to put an end to this here pretty soon because we go so damn long with these.
I know we do, man. It's too fun not to, man.
Yeah,
it's too important not to.
I'm going to show you a video of a guy who supports it, and then I'm going to show you a video of a guy who opposes it.
Nice.
I've always supported the death penalty. I've always supported the death penalty. I don't even understand people that don't. We have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price. Death penalty. Bring it forth.
Now they give the death penalty where they give a slight injection so that they don't have pain when the needle goes in to slowly put them to sleep. I mean, these people have to be treated very, very severely, and they're not treated severely.
Very much in favor of the death penalty, especially for terrorists and especially for people that, you know, killers that you see so many with the girls that are being killed and then they capture these guys. I am so for the death penalty. We will believe the right punishment, and we all do, for cop killers is called the death penalty. Remember the old days, a deserter, what happened? Bang. He deserted. You know, in the old days when we were a strong country, it would be boom, gone.
You know, spies in the old days used to be executed.
Bing, and it goes quickly, right? It's called, you're dead, treason. It's treason. You don't even hear that word. It's treason. You know, in the old days, boom, firing squad. No, it's true.
That is, you know, he actually executed, I think it was 10 people during the 2000 in the federal prison. He had,
I'm not surprised.
10 people executed.
I'm not surprised. He's talking about the guys who get the girls and kills them. And I would ask, you know, how many, it's one thing to kill the bodies of a women, but how many women have you killed internally with the way that you treat and think about and talk about women?
Yeah. You know, what's interesting to me, like, you know, you think about the death penalty. Okay. So let's say hypothetically, okay. So, you know, death penalty is good for people that extreme, you know, offenses and things like that. But do we like sit there and we cheer and geez, like all the people in the background, you know, that were like just, yeah.
Your state has executed 234 death row inmates, more than any other governor in modern times. Have you struggled to sleep at night with the idea that any one of those might have been innocent?
No, sir, I've never struggled with that at all. The state of Texas has a very thoughtful, a very clear process in place of which when someone commits the most heinous of crimes against our citizens. But in the state of Texas, if you come into our state and you kill one of our children, you kill a police officer, you are involved with another crime and you kill one of our citizens, you will face the ultimate justice in the state of Texas, and that is you will be executed.
What do you make of
you know,
and my thoughts, like, there comes the Christians.
Yeah, those are the Christians. Terrible. Yeah,
and it's terrible because for others that say, you know, well, I identify as a Christian, you have to say, but not that kind, but not that kind of Christian,
right? I mean, to me, it's just like, I mean, the death penalty, it's like, okay, so we do it, and it's kind of like, oh, that sucks. I mean,
yes.
I mean, is it really exciting and cool to put people to death?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Fucking weird.
How?
Yeah. Bong.
About a deserter. He was a draft dodger.
He was.
He was a draft dodger.
He was a deserter. He should have been. He should have been. Bing, bong.
And yet none of those people going, even thought about that, man. Like you're cheering, and there's the guy standing right there. Yeah. Back it up.
It's amazing. I couldn't even imagine just being like the guy in the video that hits the button, you know, kind of thing.
No,
I don't know. Like, I'd still just be like, dude, this sucks, you know?
I know.
I'm not like really.
I know. And let's put it down to a class system. If we have judges that make the decision,
they should be doing
prosecutor. Exactly. Why are we handing it down to a $10 an hour worker?
Yeah.
Why? to take it off our conscience.
Yeah,
Make the
100%.
decision. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, because we put them to death, not the Christians, though.
That's right. That's right. Don't get it twisted. Don't
Not the
get
Christians.
it twisted. Don't get it twisted.
All right, I'll show you a quick video.
Reasonable people can disagree about whether capital punishment is a morally appropriate sanction for the most heinous of crimes. And our opponents place tremendous value on retribution by execution. They think that is an incredible benefit. But I think when you reason about this as a public policy issue, and that's why we're here, and you look at the costs and benefits of having a death penalty versus life without parole in a maximum security prison, you're going to reach the same conclusion that 6 states have reached in the last 6 years. The death penalty doesn't work. It should be repealed and abolished. What are the costs? The death penalty creates an undeniable and unacceptable risk of executing innocents. The death penalty does not deter. The National Academy of Sciences recently reviewed all the studies and found no evidence of a deterrent effect. And common sense tells you that, because the states that execute the most, like Texas and Virginia, do not have lower homicide rates, do not have lower crime rates than the states that don't have a death penalty. The death penalty is administered arbitrarily. It depends on the quality of your representation. And who has money, and your race often determines what kind of representation you get. The death penalty also depends on where you're tried. It's incredibly arbitrary in this sense. It's only 2% of counties in the United States that are responsible for 56% of the executions, of the death sentences, and 52% of executions.
Wow.
I want to say something really quick to this. Listen to the arguments of Trump, and I listen to that guy's arguments. I'm going with that guy's arguments because he's actually explained something. I mean, the only real argument that people have for the death penalty, he disputed a lot of them. One is cost. It doesn't. It actually costs about, I think they were saying in Texas, about 3 times the amount of money to sentence somebody to death versus sentencing 3 times versus sentencing a person to 40 years in prison.
Yep.
Now, a lot of it, again, because of the appeals, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have the appeals because we want to make sure that these people are actually guilty,
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, you'd think so. And I loved his arguments because, again, it just varies across the board. There's no consistency.
Yeah.
There's no, do you have money? If you have money, you get the good attorney. We were mentioning that earlier. Location, if you're in a really racist place, you're going to have a lot of racist jurors. I mean, who else are you going to have, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, if you do look at the numbers, and I didn't get all the numbers on this, but there is a huge variation, again, between who the death penalty is against. If it's white people that were killed, you're more likely to be, pursued for death.
Absolutely.
Person, we don't care.
Right. And if we talk about cop killers, do we hold cops in the same light if they kill? Exactly. We don't.
I mean, that guy, that one guy, killed somebody. I mean, should he have been put to death? I mean, he killed somebody.
Right.
I mean, where do they, and that's the whole thing, like, where do you decide? Where do you make that decision? Is it one person? Is it 2 people? I don't know.
Where do we step out of, it goes back to that same argument of us not realizing what it means for us to be made in God's image. We make God in our own image according to our own agendas. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a really big policy on the side of very conservative Christians. And I just hate to say that, but we go all the way back to the blaming the world's problems on the devil. Of course, we don't have to take responsibility if, the devil's wreaking havoc. You know what I'm saying? Right. We don't take responsibility for our own stuff. So, I hate to group people together because I feel like it makes me in the same way. But, it's hard not to, man. Sometimes it's just hard not to when you experience more on that side. But I'm going to agree with you as my closing statement here, is that if it came down to just arguments and I didn't have an opinion either way, and I heard both arguments on the same night, I'm gonna have to go with the last guy.
Yeah.
That last guy.
Well, because the arguments for they're not really big arguments. I mean, that guy, really put thought into this and studied and things like that. It doesn't deter.
We know that. Yeah.
And so there's, now again, I will say, like, am I, for like a serial killer that is clearly innocent, that, people saw do it.
Yeah.
Things like that. Am I opposed to? I don't know. I mean, again, I could support it in certain aspects, and
I feel the same.
But I think in general, in the big picture, I sort of oppose the death penalty.
I think that, and I feel the same. I think it's all in the way we use it. I think it would have to be down to, it's not that I'm for or against the death penalty. I'm against the way we as a collective country use it at this point and in the past. And so that's where I'd stand on that.
Good stance. I'm with you on that. I'm walking with you.
You're walking in my shoes. Let's walk together, man. Let's walk together.
All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for watching this. This was actually a great episode.
Absolutely.
Discussing another very controversial topic out there. So this is what California looks like on the death penalty as far as race goes. So, ethnicity is sort of self-reported. Black people make up about 35% of those that are on death row. Whites make up 31%. Again, percentage of population of Black people is much smaller than that of white people. And then here's kind of the numbers that go down. So we currently have 697 people on death row. Again, execution's been halted, so they're not actually doing it. With 248 of those Black, 222 of those white, 132 Mexican, 44 Hispanic, 37 other, whatever that means.
Right.
9 American Indian, Alaskan Natives, and 5 Asian or Pacific Islanders. So Blacks at the top of the list.
Always. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
They're always number one with certain things.
Always. Exactly. I know. It's a sad
and they're
state.
usually the negative things,
Always, man. Always. When is it going to change?
Yeah.
Wake up, humanity. Let's step down out of supremacy.
Now I will say on this that I obviously did not look into those cases to see, and it could be all those Blacks were crazy murderers killed, and maybe they were convicted for proof, and I don't know. I obviously didn't look into that. So there could be a whole bunch of whites that are innocent, and so it could be bad. I don't know. I didn't look into it.
Right.
But I just kind of wanted to point that out, just because I think that's typically across the board.
Yeah.
You'll probably look through most states that have death row, and you'll probably look at the numbers of Black people, and I think Blacks will be probably at the top of the list on all of them.
Absolutely, man. And I tend to agree. And not looking into it, we have to go to that place where history, kind of lets us know that this is where we are. So, I don't think we'd find much different if we dug into it. So.
Well, I want to thank again everybody for watching the controversial show, as we love controversy. We love to tap into things that people hate.
Absolutely. And if you all have any show ideas, please make sure that you leave a comment. What would you like for us to look at? What gray issue? None are black and white.
Absolutely.
Even though we try to treat them that way. Yep. They're all gray. What can we look into? And make sure that you hit those awesome buttons down there under the video somewhere, the like, the share, the subscribe. Thank you for helping us grow on this channel. We have a lot planned for this little podcast and this team effort here. Yeah. So Eric, man, thank you for all your hard work. It's always a
thank
pleasure,
you.
man.
And if anybody's interested in any of these shirts, I have a few different types of shirts that are On my website, you can go to
some.
highwallclean.org. Again, hi, H-I-G-H, wow, W-H-I-L-E, clean, CLEAN.org. And I have to do that a lot of times because I'll say it and people are like trying to figure out it. So High Wall Clean, name of the podcast.
Some.
Again, my name's Eric McCoy. I'm with Lona Curie. And
that's right.
Thank you. And we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.